All right, welcome everybody. We're at another Consciousness Cafe event. We focus our efforts on trying to help people understand the breadth of reality and the role consciousness plays in it. Tonight we have an interesting speaker. We're embarking on a little different subject matter tonight. I've been noticing information about UFOs and extraterrestrial intelligence has been crossing my awareness path. Sam reached out to me a few weeks ago and offered to give a presentation on work he's been doing. So I won't go into much detail. We'll first have a presentation by Sam, then we'll have a question and answer period. Sam, why don't you start by giving us a little overview as to what it is we want to talk about tonight, the book that you helped translate, and just a big picture view, and then let's get into the details.
Well, the book is titled Thiaoouba Prophecy, The Golden Planet, written by a French Australian who said that he was taken by this group of highly advanced and highly civilized, compassionate ETs to their planet for 9 days and then came back. And after he came back, he wrote a book containing a lot of the knowledge that he believed that we have to be aware of, including the concept of reincarnation, past lives, ancient civilizations, the importance of the human energy fields, and the effects of color on the human body or the psychic abilities, as well as some of the things that we need to be aware of, such as the real dangers of Earth. Number one being money, number two, politicians, number three, journalists and drugs, number four, religions. And the book also gives a solution to the current day problems or conflicts, which is to have a concerted action by all the people together against tyrannies of the world, using nonviolent resistance to act against the financiers who run everything behind the scenes and things like that. And I found this book to be very interesting because it contains a lot of specific verifiable facts that I was able to investigate further. And if you read the book, you're going to find a lot of interesting details that have practical value. It also has information of the author's past lives, in which the ETs, the extraterrestrials, took him to his like 80 past lives and saw who he was in each of his past lives. For example, once he was a German mining worker who accidentally killed his wife, leaving many children behind. A few times he was a beggar on street. Once he was a goldsmith in Japan, a water carrier in India, and he was also a queen of a country on different planet. So according to the ETs, like the roles he played in his past lives were kind of like different positions on a wheel. What goes up has to come down. What's really important is to learn the spiritual lessons in each of his past lives so that he can send a positive feedback to his higher self, in turn sent to the creator of the universe so that he can advance and move up the ladder. So this is actually a very interesting book that I strongly encourage people to read about.
How did you happen to cross paths with him? And tell us a little bit about your work in the translation and the end result of that.
Well, I first learned about the book back in 2014 when I was searching for a book written by ET contactees on Amazon. Because in my mind, I thought that if the ETs could come and visit us, they must have advanced knowledge and technologies, and we can just learn from them in order to progress at a much faster pace. So I was searching for books like that, and by that time I read so many already, but none of the books had any like specific verifiable facts as this book did or does. So this book, after reading it, I couldn't put it down because it sort of explains a lot of the things about the stories in the Bible, like who destroyed the two cities, Sodom and Gomorrah, who really parted the sea of reeds for Moses during Exodus, and who really caused the Virgin Mary to have Jesus to be born, and who is really the Christ who died on the cross and then resurrected 3 days after. So this book connects all the dots and answers all the questions I had about the Bible. So I really couldn't put the book down when I was reading it.
And you actually met with him, interviewed him on a few occasions as part of a translation effort to
Yes,
Chinese.
yes. That's after I met the author. I was very curious to and interested in meeting the author because in the postscript of the book it says there are far more incredible things that the author, was not allowed to write in the book because we were far from understanding them. Out of extreme curiosity, strong curiosity, I was very interested in finding out what else he knew but couldn't write in the book. So I decided to track him down, and I found him to be in Vietnam at that time, still alive, fortunately. So I flew to Vietnam and brought a picture that I grabbed on the internet, a picture of his bungalow that a tourist took. Um, and then I showed the picture to the local taxi driver, asking him to take me to the bungalow. And then at the second try, he took me there where I met the author. But unfortunately, he wasn't very happy to see me because he was a very private person. But then he believed that I could help him to follow up with the contract that he signed with a Chinese publisher because I speak Chinese. And so I did in order to win some favors from him. So that he could tell me the one thing he didn't write in the book. So I decided to work with him and to help him out and got a book published in China and Taiwan, where it became a bestseller in both countries.
So before we go back to the specific lessons, I think that I want to go back and review. Um, I have a kind of cross-cultural interest. It seems in this country there is a rising interest in these phenomena. Um, is there also an interest in China? And are they experiencing things? Is there like a parallel track that's going on over there?
Yes, historically, Chinese people have always been interested in the paranormal or the ETs because in the fairy tales of the Chinese literature, there were descriptions of ghosts or ET beings from other planets. And also, after China began to open itself up in the 80s, it actually allowed a lot of the books on UFOs to be printed and published in China. And also, traditionally, Chinese people practiced the Qigong or the energy practice.
Hmm.
So there were a lot of verifiable stories of people having extraordinary abilities, such as being able to levitate, be able to see the auras or human energy fields, be able to heal different people just using their mind or using different Chinese herbal medicines or through acupuncture. And I actually, in the past, the Chinese ancient doctors, they could see the auras, they could see the blockages in the energies or the auras. So they just used the needles to remove the blockages so that the patients would be able to be healed almost instantaneously. But unfortunately, as days went by, a lot of the Chinese doctors lost the ability to see the auras or the human energy fields. So that's why they developed this kind of meridian system or acupressure points based on different symptoms. And then the doctors nowadays would just put the needles on the acupressure points based on the symptoms, not based on what they see in the human energy fields.
Hmm. That's fascinating. So let's go back to what the author experienced. You touched on the main messages, but I'd like to go back to them again because I think that's really why the book was written, wasn't it? Um, I read the book, and my sense was that he was given this opportunity as so he could be a messenger. Would you say that's true?
Yes, his mission is to write about what he personally saw, witnessed, and experienced, and to warn us that we have to change our ways of living, otherwise we'll be heading a catastrophe. So he listed the 4 or 5 dangers, the real dangers on Earth. Number one being money, number two, politicians and journalists and drugs and religions.
Yeah, we can certainly, if we focus on any one of those, you can see why it's a problem. Um, I know in this country, I can't speak for a lot of other countries, but we're programmed to focus on material wealth. When we go through school, more often than not, the subjects that get studied are intended to lead to careers. We want to buy houses and cars. Um, and I think what happens is we lose sight of our spiritual underpinnings because we're so focused on the material world. We're also seeing, I don't, you know, of course, in this country, the political divisiveness that we're experiencing, um, I see us moving in a direction, potentially a direction that's more autocratic. Um, and I see the number of countries that around the world that are headed by people who seem to be more interested in power than doing things, positive things for their people. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. Money is the root of all problems. A lot of the industries revolve around money. For example, the pharmaceutical industry, the energy industry. There are reasons behind this because the drug companies or the pharmaceutical companies, they have to serve the interests of their shareholders. So that means if they know a way to eliminate diabetes, they really wouldn't want to do so because their shareholders rely on the drugs that they provide to diabetic patients. And if you like cure diabetes, then it would be kind of like cutting off their source of income. So they wouldn't actively encourage ways to cure certain diseases such as diabetes or cancer. But there are ways to really naturally or very inexpensively kind of reverse the conditions of diabetes, for that matter, that I know of. Similarly, the energy industry as well, because in the 1970s, there was a name called Stanley Meyer who invented a car that ran on water because he was able to break the water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, and he used hydrogen to power the vehicles. So, but then before he was able to commercialize his invention, he mysteriously died in a restaurant. It's just so that the other inventions on the same level, but they were not able to commercialize such clean energy engines. And so is the education industry, because nowadays we see that students kind of are indoctrinated by certain ways of thinking, not necessarily by the school to encourage their independent thinking. So I think money is the root of all problems. So are the politicians because they only serve the interests of their own, not the public. And the few politicians that used to kind of take care of the interests of the public, for example, JFK, John F. Kennedy, and Lincoln, or for that matter, Gandhi in India, they get killed. So this is the state of world that we are currently living in. But the book gives a solution, which is the power of the people is not to be underestimated. We can act together collectively using nonviolent resistance to make great changes in the world, because great revolutions always come from the grassroots level, never from the top-down level. So we have to bring this collective consciousness to as many people as possible in order to make changes happen. in order to have a better future.
Yeah, it seems like there's a two-step process that has to go on. First, people have to be educated that there is something so much better and that we are spiritual beings. I think it was uh, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin said, we are not humans having spiritual experiences, we're spiritual beings having human experiences. If more people understood the significance of that, it might be easier to mobilize, and I don't know, that word has some implications to it, but get us engaged, like you're suggesting, that the power of people wanting something better, wanting something different, wanting something that recognizes oneness, instead of the divisiveness that we see. So that was one of the messages I liked in the book. And it's a challenge, I think. How do we build that awareness so that people can buy into the notion that we really should get organized and try to improve things?
Yes. The book also touches upon the meaning of life and the creation of mankind. It describes the creation of everything as there's a creator of the universe, which is actually located in the center of the universe. And then it imagined everything. And then there's a big bang or big explosion. Everything was created. So it created the stars, the planets, animals, plants, and human beings on Earth. When it created human beings, it inserted a tiny portion of itself to each one of us. So we are part of the creator, and the creator is part of us. The creator is actually using our physical body to experience the happiness, the sorrows, and also everything that happens in our daily life. And we send positive feedback to the creator through our higher self. So this is the meaning of life, is just to learn the different spiritual lessons through the challenges that we face. And then if we do have challenges, if people do feel desperate when certain things happen, they should look inside for answers and not to follow a specific politician or the mainstream media, because as the Bible says, the kingdom of God is within you. So that's, I think, the most important sentence in the Bible, because we are part of the Creator and we can just look inside for answers through meditation, through prayers, or just through having a good night of sleep, because sometimes in dreams we can connect to a higher self. And when the solution is good for our spiritual development, they will be given to you in dreams or through other means. So I think it's important to know that um, we are here to experience and to learn spiritual lessons.
So there is purpose behind negative things that happen in our life. It's just an experience that helps us um, see contrast and grow. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yes, the more challenges that you face, the more you will learn. Imagine that you're trying to teach your son a mathematical problem. If you just always give him like the simple algebra problems such as 1 plus 1, 1 plus 2, then he's going to learn very slowly. But if you're going to give him gradually more challenging lessons or problems for him to solve, then he's going to learn at much faster pace. So I think the more difficulties you encounter in your lifetime, that's actually a blessing, a very good opportunity for you to respond to the challenges. So you're going to learn more kind of in-depth or more spiritual lessons.
And this is also true beyond just an individual level, right? That as a species, we have these challenges to learn, right?
Yes, and we have to take our own initiative to learn the challenges and to respond to the challenges. Because, like, I'll give you an illustration. For example, there's a scientist or biologist in Mexico who saw like a cocoon in which the butterfly was trying to struggle out and come out from the cocoon. And then being a very kind of nice-hearted person, a kind person. He opened the cocoon up so that the butterfly could come out. The butterfly came out but couldn't fly because it had to go through the struggling process itself in order to be able to fly. So similarly, we people on Earth have to go through the struggling process on our own in order to be able to survive for the long term on Earth.
So one of the things that struck me in reading this book was that this other civilization, I think you pronounce it Thiaoouba, um, they had transcended that. They didn't have the challenges that we have. Maybe they went through it themselves and were able to evolve to what they are today.
Well, all the inhabitants on Thiaoouba, a Category 9 planet, went through the same process as we are going through right now. So they were living on Category 1 planet. And I have to give some background information because when the creator created the universe, it actually categorized different planets. We are currently living on Category 1 planet, the lowest category in the universe. The Thiaoubans, they live on Category 9 planet, the highest category. And then because they are living on a very advanced planet, they can perform all the miracles as performed by Christ. They can levitate, they can heal all the diseases you can think of, they can materialize objects, and they can also project images to people's mind. And they never age. They're forever young because they can regenerate their body tissues and cells. When Michel, the author, went on their planet, he believed that he was in a paradise. So he didn't want to come back because everything was so beautiful and perfect that he wanted to stay there forever. So they are highly advanced beings on a very advanced planet, but they also have their roles to play, which is to guide people on like lower level or lower category of planets. And in fact, they have been guiding us throughout history. They helped us sometimes directly and most times indirectly. Um, one of the things I mentioned was the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that's actually done according to this book by the Thiaoubans because they believe that the residents of the two cities were so evil that they punished the compassionate people, people who were going to help the poor and the needy. And if you read the Jewish text, the Hebrew text, you're going to see how uh, the people did, what kind of things the people did in the two cities. They tortured a girl to death, almost to death, just because a girl gave food to a beggar on street. So this is what they did. So the Thiaoubans believe that it's very dangerous because people who are in contact with them can be affected negatively by the residents of the two cities, that the two cities had to be distracted. So this is what they did. This is very similar to if you have malignant tumors on your body, and would you want to keep them so that they can spread to the rest of your body? Or would you rather take them out surgically? So this is what the Thiaoubans did, and kind of like surgically removing the two cities. And they also helped Moses and also helped people to learn the teachings of Christ.
So one of the things that I think about is um, there's this distinction between us as humans and us as eternal souls. Um, so when Sodom and Gomorrah happened, all the people that died, those were humans, but their souls took that experience with them back to the other side. So somehow there was, they had this gave them an opportunity to learn a lesson that if they hadn't done this, then I think that what you're saying is that they would have continued, the souls would have come back and just continued the kinds of lives. So it's a soul evolution that we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes. So the Thebans gave them an opportunity to restart everything, but they have to um, learn the lessons that the mistakes that they did in the past. Because what the Thebans or the book mentions about is a life review process. So when a person dies, the person has to go through a life review process in which everything will be shown to the person holographically. And
So, Sam, I have a question for you. It's more of a kind of a scientific one. Um, the travel to this other planet. Can you talk a little bit about that? How did they get from here to there?
okay, they did it through two steps. The first step is that they first traveled at a few times faster than the speed of light into deep space. And then they used transubstantiation, or what I would call teleportation, to immediately transfer the spacecraft to another location in deep space. Um, that's, that was done instantaneously without any lag of time. And then from that location in deep space, they again traveled at a few times faster than the speed of light to their destination. They had to use, they have to travel through teleportation in deep space because they say, according to Michel Desmarquet, the author, that if they did that, um, like in the earthly atmosphere, their spacecraft would have exploded. So this is why they had to do it in deep space. And so they traveled in far distances using this method.
And from a physical body perspective, didn't they have to the author have to be put in some kind of suspended state?
No, he didn't feel anything actually. He didn't feel that they were traveling at all. There was no inertia, feeling some inertia, and he was just kind of uh, kind of was feeling that he was in a stationary environment. And this is because they are highly advanced. So I guess that they had a lot of technologies to make him feel that they were not moving at all, when in fact they were moving or traveling at a very fast speed.
Was he in some kind of enclosed contraption? But didn't his body have to be put into some sit in a special chair or something?
Well, only during the acceleration phase and deceleration phase, that he had to remain in a coffin-like location in which
Mm.
his bodies were kind of not movable. But then there are a lot of details, interesting details during the travel. He saw like sparklings on the screen, like and he asked what those are, and they were. He was told that those were the space dusts being destroyed by antimatter guns. So I found that to be very interesting because if it were made up, then he wouldn't have written these interesting details. Because we are traveling at very fast speed in space, you're definitely going to encounter like space dust or small asteroids, and you
Mm.
and at so fast of a speed, when even small minuscule stone hits the spacecraft, it will cause a huge collision effect. So I think that's a very interesting detail in the book.
Yeah. Um, so he's since passed. He's no longer alive. Um, is his book still of interest in over in China?
Yes, it's actually still a very good seller in China.
Mhm.
He passed away in 2018, and I met him for the second time just a few months before he passed. And and people in China are fascinated by this subject because, like, in the last 20 years or so, the government has become more stringent in allowing this kind of books to enter the Chinese market. or the bookstores. So there was a vacuum or demand of such information or books to fill the vacuum in China. So when the book was published as a science fiction in China, it caused a big kind of momentum of interest.
I'm wondering if there's a parallel, in this country. My sense is that the government, a portion of our government, has known for a long time that there are ETs that are visiting us, but they've done their darndest to try to keep that information from the general public. Would you say that's similar approach in China?
Well, China has a very interesting but different approach. So China uses that as a way to publicize that the U.S. government or the Russian government has very advanced technologies from the ETs because they retrieved the crashed UFOs. So they don't mention anything about their own discoveries or their contacts with the ETs because it's considered secret or confidential. But they try to bring in information from the US or Russia to their advantage, kind of like using the media of the Western media to portray the Western government as a government that keeps a lot of secrets from their citizens.
Have you ever seen the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still?
No, probably not.
If you haven't, you might want to watch that. It was the original came out probably in the early 1960s or late 50s. Science fiction movie. It's about a spaceship that comes here with one physical being and one massive robot. And the message is that we need to pull together, that there are other intelligences that are willing to begin interacting with us, but we have to resolve our problems. And the movie is about the fear that arises around this. And you might want to watch that, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
I think that message is fairly accurate based on what Michel Desmarquet knew about the ETs from Thiaoouba, because even though they were in contact with us during the ancient civilizations, like the Lemuria civilization, they are not in contact with us directly today because we are not ready yet. Imagine when you go to the zoo, if you see two groups of gorillas fighting against each other, would you want to invite them to your beautiful mansion so that they make a big mess? No, you wouldn't, because they're not ready. They're not behaving in a very civilized manner. Similarly, we people on Earth are fighting against each other, having wars in Ukraine and Russia and also other places. So we are not ready yet to have direct contact with the ETs. So this is an issue that we're having right now.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that in your interviews that there were some things that you were told that weren't published in the book. Have we covered those in this conversation, or are there some things that you'd like to share?
Well, there are two things I can share publicly, and the other thing that I can give you some hints. The two things I can share publicly, one is about the Sphinx in Egypt. According to Michel, the Thiaoubans, the ETs, told him that there are 3 chambers beneath the Sphinx of Egypt. When we are ready, the 3 chambers can be opened. And when they're opened, everything will be known. This is very similar to what Edgar Cayce said about the Hall of Records beneath the Sphinx. I find that to be very interesting. The second thing is about the Greys, the ETs that we call the Greys, the short ones with the big eyes. According to Michel Desmarquet, he revealed publicly in a lecture in Atlanta in 1995 that according to the Thiaoubans or the Jehovans, they have been monitoring the activities of the Greys who have been putting implants on people on Earth. just to monitor how we respond to our increasingly decreased immune system. Because we have been losing our immune system since 1948, and the Greys have also been losing their immune system. They wanted to monitor how we respond to the same situation so that they can learn from us. And the Thiaoubans have been monitoring their activities just to ensure that no harm is done to us. And the crashed UFOs are actually from the Greys. This indicates that their technology is not that far advanced because their UFOs crashed. The spacecrafts of the Thiaoubans will never crash on Earth because their technologies are far more advanced than the technologies of the Greys. So we should learn from the best. We should learn from the Thiaoubans, and we shouldn't learn from the Greys because their spacecraft crashed.
Mhm.
And the other thing that I can only give you a hint, all the hints and like can be found on the article that I wrote, in which is a thing that Michel wasn't allowed to write in the book. The title of the article is The Second Coming of Jesus Christ and what you need to do to be prepared. So that article gives many clues and hints for those of you who are interested. And I think I'll just give you like some information about that article. It quotes a lot of the verses in the Bible because some of the verses in New Testaments of the Bible are accurate and correct regarding the second coming of Christ. Only some of them. And also people should pay attention to the book of Enoch because we know that Enoch went with God or the Thiaoubans according to this book. Michel Desmarquet, after he came back from Thiaouba, he was shown the book of Enoch and he read it and he found a lot of similarities of the descriptions of what Enoch wrote in the book of Enoch and what he actually experienced and saw during his trip. He believed that Enoch was taken by the Thiaoubans as well. And remember what happened after Enoch. A few decades after, his great-grandson Noah was told to build an ark. And Michel Desmarquet, he wrote a book in 1989 and got a book published in 1993. And you can imagine what's going to happen a few decades later. But remember, the past is fixed, but the future is changeable. We can change the future for the better if we change the ways how we live. So this is the gist of the book, is that we can change our future for the better if we intentionally act that way.
Mhm. Let's start moving into a question and answer period now, because I could sit here for another hour, just the two of us talking, but I want to give other people a chance to pose some questions. There was one put in, Susan put into the chat, but before I read it to you, I want to encourage people, if you put questions in the chat, we'll pull those up in the sequence they come in, and let's give Sam a chance to answer them. So the first question is, how are these beings able to move forward in their evolution from the state we are in now?
So what happened was that some of their people used to live on Earth. So that would be hundreds of thousands of years ago. And they have to go through this process of purifying their self, their spiritual body, and to move up the ladder. So there are like 9 different categories of planets, as I mentioned before. So when I die, if I learned sufficient spiritual lessons during my time on Earth, then I would be able to move up the ladder and to live on category 2 planet after I reincarnate. And then after category 2 planet, if I learn sufficient spiritual lessons, I would move up to a category 3 planet. And then sometimes if you are like the Buddha, you have this kind of enlightenment or self-realization, you can jump the categories, you can jump the levels. And I believe that the Buddha probably moved up to a category 9 planet because he had the knowledge to do so. So this is a way how we progress and move up, is that you have to accumulate and learn sufficient or enough spiritual lessons in order to go to a planet that seemed to be like a paradise.
That implies that there's some kind of mechanism that would prevent somebody from just jumping to a category 9 if they haven't. That something prevents that soul from making that leap because they haven't learned all the lessons they need to learn.
Exactly. For example, if a murderer who killed a person, or if a rapist who raped a woman or a girl, that person will not move up the ladder for a long time. Will not, because there's a karmatic effect to that person. That person has to suffer all the pain suffered by the person he harmed or injured.
All right. Paulina has submitted a question. Paulina, how are you doing? She's from Mexico, professor in the university there. The question is, can we keep up with nature? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, Paulina. Are you talking about the climate change things that are going on? Can you be a little more specific? And if you want to unmute and ask your question that way, you can do that. Well, maybe we're not able to connect with her. Well, let's move on. If somebody else has a question, we'll come back, and Paulina, if you can make that a little clearer what you're trying to get at, that'd be helpful. So it seems we have free will, and that free will allows us to make a decision. If we learn about these things, we can make decisions on how we want to lead our lives. If we don't learn that this is, if we go back to the Teilhard de Chardin's statement, if we don't assimilate the knowledge that we are spiritual beings, then perhaps we remain focused on the human side and don't try to experience a higher spiritual.
Yeah. I think it's very important to realize that we don't take away any of the material wealth when we die. But we take away the spiritual lessons we learn in the lifetime. So being a compassionate person is very important, because when you die, you're going to feel the appreciation or the thankfulness of the people you helped. So that's going to be a celebration, a banquet waiting if you helped a lot of people, especially anonymously, because everything that we do is recorded in the universe. Actually, the book explains about how that works, what some people would call the Akashic record, because there's a psychosphere, or a cocoon that rotates 7 times the speed of light around the planet, recording everything that happens in the planet. So this is why I think it's very important for us to follow the teachings of Christ, be kind to each other and love one another, because you're going to feel the appreciation and you will be rewarded after you pass.
Bill Lenfesty has his hand raised. Bill, if you want to unmute and pose your question.
Well,
go ahead, Bill.
okay, I'm trying to get this to unmute.
No, you're unmuted. We can hear you.
Okay, it's just not showing up. I had 2 questions. I read a story. I was reading some stuff on Zen, and there was a story. This was somewhere in like Southeast Asia, I think it was, that there was a man who had been a really criminal, and I mean, he killed something like, I think they said like 80 people or 90 people or something, and he just did awful stuff. And he was, I think he was getting ready to be executed by the government. And just before he was executed, he experienced enlightenment. And I didn't understand any of this, because when you made the remark a while ago that, you know, if somebody is a murderer or a rapist, that he wouldn't be able to advance, which I would think is correct. But the story was somehow this guy did it. And of course, there's no way to tell what he was trying to work out from his past. But it was almost as if all of these crimes caused him to somehow advance, and I really cannot explain that. It made no sense to me. I don't know if you've ever come across anything like that, because it's you know, it's counterintuitive. It's simply, how can that happen? This guy is such a terrible person. But that was supposed to be the story. You know, I mean, I don't know. I can't explain it.
So Sam, let me pose this a little differently to you. Is it possible that we come into this life with plans, things to be accomplished, and we work with others? Is it possible that somebody comes into this life and they have a plan that they're going to murder somebody because that person being murdered is going to get an important lesson? So from a spiritual perspective, it's the person doing the killing is not doing a bad thing.
So it's kind of like somebody said, if it hadn't been for Judas, Jesus could have been crucified. And so you make the argument that it was a good thing. I guess it is, but that's kind of dangerous, because then you think, well, I'm doing the world a favor by killing this person. I mean, I know what you're saying, but it's like I put you on a slippery slope, don't you think?
Well, if somebody killed Hitler, would your thinking change?
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So
I mean,
Sam, yeah, give Sam a chance to weigh in on this.
So I would suggest the person asking the question to read this book, because it will answer your question. Christ, the one who died on the cross, is a unique case, because his purpose is just to preach the spiritual lessons to people on earth, and he resurrected on the after 3 days, just to show that there is reincarnation to the people at that time. He had to perform miracles in order for his teachings to be believed. So if you really read the some of the non-canonized texts regarding what happened in the past, Pilate, yeah, the one who decided that Jesus to be crucified.
Pilate.
Yeah, Pilate, yes. He really didn't want to do so. He was willing to give up his son, his only son, to replace Jesus, replace Christ. And Christ actually performed miracles according to the non-canonized text, in order to convince him that he was to be predestined to be crucified on the cross. So that's why Pilate agreed to do that, in order for the mission of Christ to be fulfilled or complete or accomplished. So that's a very unique case. But in terms of the murder, that's a different story. Remember, Moses was given the 10 Commandments, and one of the 10 Commandments is not to murder. And because everyone has a life mission here on earth. If you murder like another, you are actually kind of causing the life contract of that person to be breached or to be terminated. So you are interfering with the life mission of that person. You are going to face consequences. And the universe works in mysterious ways. Sometimes the karmatic effects will come in the next lifetime. Sometimes it will come after 10 lifetimes. But sooner or later, the karmatic effect will come in the future. So I don't know where you learned that story, but it may be a fictional story. But if it were true, that may be because the karmatic effect of his past 80 or 90 murders have not come back in his next lifetime, but they will definitely come in the future lives of that person. It will never go unpunished.
Okay. We're going to let Sheila pose her question, then I'm going to turn to Carrie's question in the chat. So go ahead, Sheila.
Hi, Sam.
Yes.
I have some questions around the appearance of extraterrestrials. I'm actually a healer, and I work with the Akashic Records, and I have sessions with people. From time to time, extraterrestrials will come through. And to me, they always look like that characteristic head shape and body shape that we as Americans have imagined and have seen. And I was wondering if they could appear differently, or is that the way I'm going to always see them?
Well, according to Michel Desmarquet, the author, there are at least 147 different species of ETs in our Milky Way galaxy. The ones he encountered are 9 or 10 foot tall, very beautiful looking, Nordic looking, blonde, sexy looking hermaphrodites, meaning that they have both male and female sexual organs. The grays, on the other hand, are just like the ones that I described, shorter ones with big black eyes,
Yeah.
big head. And when you channel or when you try to communicate with the ETs, you might be communicating with a specific species of ETs.
Yeah.
But there are other species of ETs in our Milky Way galaxy in which Michel Desmarquet met a very unique looking ET that shaped like a square and they're very short, but grayish looking like ETs. And there are different kinds of ETs, and some of them look very strange to us.
Yeah, okay. So the other question I have is about the hybrids, and I've encountered 2 hybrids, but it was about 20 years ago, and it was within a 6-month time period. So is there some, and I knew they were hybrids because of the mental telepathy. They knew that I knew that they were hybrids. So is there something that has to do with the time period that they populate here? Do they come in and leave? Do they come here for a project and then leave, or do they live here? I don't understand the comings and goings of the hybrids.
When we all came from different planets originally, the blacks and the yellows, the ancestors of the Polynesians, the Caucasians, and the Hebrews, we all came from different planets. And the blacks and the yellows and the Caucasians mixed together and became like North Africans, and the blacks and the yellows, they mixed together to become Middle Easterns. But there are other ETs. I don't know if there are other ETs that mixed with people on Earth. But I also want to bring your attention to a technology that the military has, which is called the voice-to-skull technology, SKULL, or sometimes called voice-to-God technology. So what they can do is that they can project microwave energy into the brain of the receivers, or sometimes they would call the targeted individuals, making the individuals believe that a voice is coming from within the ears or coming from inside the brain, trying to communicate with them. And they can also project images onto the brains of the targeted individuals, making them believe that they're having a real life experience, which in fact they're just holographic simulations. So this is a military technology. If you do a search, voice to skull technology, you can find a lot of information, and sometimes they run experiments to individuals, making them believe that they're communicating with people that they know or they don't know. But there are communications by the ETs as well. But it's very important to distinguish man-made communications from such technologies versus the real communications from ETs.
Mm-hmm.
All
Okay.
right. We have Carrie Dyer's question. First, a bit of a statement. It says, this conversation is really interesting and reminds me of Stephen Greer's work. He recently released a documentary titled, quote, The Lost Century, unquote. There are a lot of overlaps with these concepts. Is there a possibility that the powers that be, including money, politicians, journalists, and religions, may be hiding important technology that could propel us into the future?
And could you
So here's another way of maybe posing the question. If there have been UFOs that have crashed and the government had a chance to look at the technology, is it possible that they're holding it very close and not allowing us to benefit from what they might have learned?
Yes, definitely. And I agree with Dr. Greer on this point, is that the government does have a secret project that reverses the technologies, reverse engineers the technologies of the ETs, but they're reversing the technologies of the Greys because their spacecraft crashed on Earth. So they're learning from the ETs who live on Category 1 planet. And I would encourage people to learn from the best, learn from the ETs who live on Category 9 planet, learn from the Thiaoubans who have been guiding us throughout history, so that we can learn from the masters and not learn from our peers. So I would encourage people to read this book and to gain practical knowledge.
Before we go to Bill, there's a question from Susan Stewart. I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer it, Sam. So are you saying we will always be a Class 1 planet? Can we raise to a higher level planet?
Okay, so Earth is a Category 1 planet, and but we as people, when we die, our astral body leaves a physical body. We can move up the ladder and then reincarnate to a Category 2 or Category 3 planet. And one of the most interesting contained book is regarding the Hebrews, why they were the chosen people. It's a little bit controversial, but I would encourage people to read the book. They originally came from a Category 3 planet, while the rest of us came from a Category 1 planet. So this is why they have been a little bit different from us and a little bit unique in the sense of their solidarity, their intelligence, and things that they do. And so this is why, so yeah, just read the book and get more information.
Yeah, so kind of building on this, our soul is not, I think it's not a human soul. Our soul can incarnate in other places. So maybe instead of thinking of us as being, we are earthlings while we're in this physical body, but when we move on, we may very well decide to come back and have another Earth experience, but perhaps we can go to other Category 1 planets and have experiences there as well.
Yes, in fact, Michel Desmarquet in the past, in one of his past lives, lived on Category 7 planet. But because of something that he did on the planet, he came down here, or probably because of his free will to help people on Earth. by having this experience. So actually Moses was, before Moses came to earth, before he reincarnated to earth, he was living on category 8 planet. And Jesus, the one born from Virgin Mary, before he reincarnated to earth, he was living on category 9 planet. So people can come to earth to a lower level of planet by his own will, or by karma, or karmatic effect.
Bill, you had your hand up a while ago. You want to pose a second question?
One of the most important things in the book that really caused me to investigate further was the information on Jesus and Christ. I didn't know that there was a tomb of Jesus in Shingo Village, Japan. But the book connects all the dots, explaining why some people say that Jesus went to India, and why there's a tomb of Jesus in Japan. And you can look up in the internet and do a search, the tomb of Jesus in Japan. You're going to find a lot of information. And this book explains why that's the case. And it also gives accounts of King Herod killing 2,606 babies, just to prevent, like as what the Bible said, that he killed many babies.
Paulina wrote something here, going back to her original question. She says, nature is a challenge for us as humans, a counterpart, meaning I think that there is, nature has its own consciousness, but nature somehow is more advanced in intelligence and intuition. And it seems to me also that she is a force that we cannot in a good way control. I guess the answer I'm looking for is that nature is in our best side, even though it might not appear like it, nature being both material and spiritual alike.
One of the central themes in the book is to follow nature. That's the closest path to advance spiritually. And following nature is actually the best way to progress. And this is one of the central themes in the book. So when we try to create artificial things, like, I'll give you a very simple example. So we try to make sweeteners, and or put artificially made sugars, or for example, aspartame into beverages or soft drinks. And that has negative consequences because we are not following nature. We are actually breaking the structures of the natural sugar. Natural sugar contained in fruits doesn't really cause tooth decay. Because if you see like people in ancient times, like in Africa or tropical areas, they eat a lot of fruits, but they have very good teeth because they didn't really destroy the structure of natural sugar. But when you destroy the structure of natural sugar, making sweeteners, it causes tooth decay because the teeth is not adapted to the structure of the sugar that you artificially changed. And also it causes a lot of other issues, stress on your pancreas, and also some of the other issues. Actually, soft drink is one of the main reasons for people having diabetes. So you are not following nature, not eating raw foods. So you are actually having a lot of deviations from the shortest path that you can have.
Mm-hmm. Bill, I'll try going back to you.
Okay.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. This is not my question, but back in the early 70s, there was a group called Ekankar, and they believed that we were placed on particular levels, to learn lessons. But what some of the practitioners were stating was that Earth would, for example, always be the same level planet. It's kind of as if you had a school and you've got people who are in the 5th and 6th grades. And once they have learned the lessons they need to learn, they move out of the 5th and 6th grades, but you're always going to have 5th and 6th grade level behaviors. And the people who improve don't actually improve the level of the earth. They just move on to something higher. I have no idea if that's, but my question is the belief that we've got that whatever we call God is, I guess, loving and benevolent. Is that pretty much standard on other planets? I always have this fear that, maybe if the entity or the force that we call God may not be the ultimate force, and there's somebody who's kind of not benevolent and kind of mean, who's up above that force, who's going to say, well, you guys have been doing it wrong all along. And there really isn't, love isn't really the ultimate goal. Maybe it's, it's acquisition, or maybe it's vengeance or whatever. And you kind of wonder sometimes if maybe, yeah, does that make sense? Where you wonder if maybe we're hoping that following the good is going to get us where we want to go, but perhaps that's not the ultimate ruling force.
Well, according to this book, everything is about love. When God created everything, it wants to experience through our physical encounters or experiences in life, and we send only positive feedback to the source, to the creator. And what you mentioned about the vengeance or the fear of God, according to Michel Desmarquet, those are added information or beliefs to the Bible by the Catholic Church Council meetings. And this book specifically named the 4 different Catholic Church Council meetings that intentionally distorted the original ancient scriptures that were later included in the Bible. So I actually had a personal experience of visiting or spending time with a fundamentalist Christian church, in which they preached about the fear of God and the vengeance of God. And I had a lot of emotional trauma, actually, in my earlier years when I was in high school. That caused my post-traumatic syndrome, actually. When I think about that, I still have like sweats or kind of emotional trauma. But I have consolation right now, because I know nowadays that those were actually added by the Catholic Church Council meetings in order to advance their interest of control of the people. So this is why organized religion is a curse on earth. We should be spiritual, but not religious. And this is why religions is actually the number 4 real danger on earth.
Yeah, I've made a point with a group of men that I interact with. We see a declining interest in organized religion. And I like to look at the glass being half full. Perhaps that has to happen to facilitate a new perception of reality. And we need to let go of those controlling, fear-based things that are a part of Christian theology. And if we can do that, we can focus on the positive things, love. You know, if you look at Bill, if you look at near-death experiences, I've read over 2,000 of these things, and I've met many people. I've never heard of there being a power greater than love, and certainly not a power that is a negative power like vengeance. So I take comfort, you know, I'm not sure where you heard that, but if that's just an idea you've generated on your own, but
Yes.
it's not, doesn't seem to be supported by the evidence.
Yeah. In a sense, we should follow the teachings of Christ, but not be religious.
Lina, a long time ago, you had your hand raised. Do you want to pose a question?
Yeah, actually, there's two I have. The first one is to Samuel. If he talks about raising to a higher class planet, is that the same as going to dimensions? That we're in different dimensions? Because I've known of at least 12 dimensions. I was really surprised with that. And that someone was saying too, when we started out on Earth, we were in the 5th dimension already and we fell. And now we're trying to get back to where we started so that we can join the universe and, you know, become a part of everything. Does that make any sense?
You know, I work with a lot of lawyers and doctors and business people. So sometimes one of the things I want to ask, or they ask, is evidence. So I don't know if the people who say about dimensions can provide evidence of it. But the book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, contains a lot of specific verifiable facts that can serve as evidence. So I think, you know, I have a difficult time comprehending or understanding the concept of dimensions or 5th or 12th dimensions. But it's very easy for me to understand the concept of different categories of planets in the universe, because the book says, which I concur, I agree, is that there are normally like 9 planets revolve around the sun or the star, and 9 stars revolve around a bigger star, and 9 bigger stars revolve around an even bigger star. The cycle goes until the center of the universe. And I find evidence in some of the news observations of astronomers who say that they discovered another galaxy that's similar to the solar galaxy of ours, in which 9 planets revolve around a star, like our sun. And also the number 9 is also a number that's considered the end of a cycle in the traditional Chinese Taoist culture. So I think the number 9 has some kind of validity.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's something about the 9 because it's a completion of a cycle, I think. And the other question I had was, and I don't know whether he wrote this in his book or not, but I think I remember Stephen Greer talking about it. It might have been an acknowledged his movie or something. I don't know. Maybe it was something else I read. But did he say anything about the aliens that lived 3 years in the Pentagon? The guy's name is Valiant Thor. They made a movie about that.
Yeah, heard about that. Yeah.
Came from Venus during the time that Eisenhower and Nixon were in office. Yeah.
That might be a possibility. According to this book, Thiaoouba Prophecy, The Golden Planet, the Thiaoubans sometimes live among us, and they can influence the decisions of politicians or our decision makers. And actually, one example they give was actually what happened during World War II. They prevented Germany from being the first country to develop the atomic bomb.
Right.
And I did World War II earlier.
Yeah, they're keeping us from doing it again because they did when they sent the bomb to Hawaii a few years ago. The people said it was well, actually the military was saying, but a lot of people got dressed down or they didn't get court-martialed because they said they were lying, but they were not. The aliens intercepted that bomb. it was supposed to go down, but they intercepted it. But the thing about it is there's so many people, no, I won't say people, they can morph into us. They can look like us. And a lot of people don't realize that you might have just walked past somebody that's not really a human being. And a lot of times I notice the eyes will give them away. If you look really deep into somebody's eyes, and especially if they're big, and they tell a story. And then other times you can't really even tell, but they're here, and we're not the only ones. People for the longest time used to think that we were the only people in existence, but we can't be. We're not that smart. We're in we start out in third dimension like that, and then we have to, kind of get back up to speed. But and in Roswell, that's what happened with the ship, and they did restructure. They tried to restructure so they could, and that's one of the reasons I think that they say that NASA came into existence, because they were using some of the information they got from that back in the 40s when Roswell happened. So it's very interesting. We're not the only ones, and a lot of the technology and stuff we know is because we got a little help from our friends.
Yeah, that's true. And I'll give you a trick. If you really want to see who are the ETs who live among us, develop the ability to see auras. Yep. Because the ETs from Thiaoouba, they have very bright and colorful auras. And if you're able to see auras, you can actually identify them, even if they change or shapeshift to us.
Mm-hmm. And also coming through the veil of forgetfulness, in order to be here, because we're so advanced, the ones of us who came to Earth had the audacity to come to Earth. We are way more advanced than what we know. And we had to have that veil. Otherwise, we turn around and go back, because, you can't function like that. You just wouldn't be able to. But because of the veil, we're able to stay and learn the lessons. But the veil is lifting. It's coming. And when that happens, telepathy, all this stuff that you were talking about, we already know how to do that. We just don't remember. But when the veil goes, it's natural. And you'll be able, like in Star Trek, beam me up, Scotty, you'll be able to go different places. You'll think of going places, and you'll just be there. That's what the Bible says, so.
Yeah. And I can tell you something about the veil. When the astral body goes into the embryo, it has to pass through what the ancient Nagas would call the river of oblivion, or what you would describe as a veil, forgetting all the knowledge that he or she learned in the past, forgetting all the past life that he or she experienced. So that's why we don't remember who we were in our past lives, or the knowledge to perform miracles. We were able to communicate through telepathy. It's just that we forget about it after we are born here. So that's the veil. And this actually explains why the young Jesus, who was born from the womb of Virgin Mary, why he couldn't perform miracles. Even though he had a very profound conversation with the teachers of the temple, there's no record in the Bible for the young Jesus performing any miracles. The Christ, who is a different entity, was able to perform miracles because he came from the outside. He came from another world. They had to send someone who could perform miracles, because people in the past, as well as people nowadays, are highly skeptical. They just wouldn't believe anyone's teaching unless the person is able to perform miracles. So this is why they had to send one of their own to perform miracles, so that his teachings would be believed by the people at that time. But he had to use a lot of parables, because he was just like explaining difficult concepts to primitive people. Like we explain the concept or the danger of the atomic bomb to cavemen. We have to use a lot of illustrations or parables. So Christ also used the same method. And you are absolutely right about the veil. We do forget about who we were in the past lives.
But he did walk on water. He said, you're going to be able to do the same things that I do. It's just we didn't. And that was another thing about faith. As a man thinketh, so is he. If you believe you can do something, then it comes to you, if you believe it. Because I've done telepathy with my husband, and we just on one side of the room, the other side, we just sent messages. Not all the time, but it is possible. So maybe we pick up things that we remember sometimes. And children and animals are really close to home, so they can actually see things and they can do things that we all can do, but we don't remember because we're so far from it, I think.
Yes, actually, there are 2 points I want to make. The book emphasizes that in Africa, like in the ancient times, people developed a lot of psychic abilities. So they were able to levitate and communicate through telepathy. And if you read the book, you're going to know the history of people in Africa. And there was a reset because of natural disaster, like an asteroid hit, a split into 3 parts and hit different parts of the world. The first part hit was now to this Red Sea area. Second part hit was now to this East Timor area. And then the third part hit was now to this Galapagos Island area. And it caused a lot of flooding and also the destruction of the civilization. So a lot of people died during the first Great Reset. The second point I want to make is that nowadays, if you do a search on the internet, some of the primitive tribes in Brazil still communicate through telepathy. And this is scientific evidence. So I think it's very possible that we can redevelop the skills that we had in the past.
Yeah.
Ron Thompson wrote a question. Ron is a near-death experiencer that I've known for some time. He poses the question, are those who have had near-death experiences, are they here to help people rising the consciousness of human race and helping us evolve? Or do you have any guidance for those like Ron who had a near-death experience? Was there a purpose behind that experience for humanity?
Yeah, so this is why I think people who have near-death experiences should or are encouraged to read the book, because when our astral body leaves the physical body, the astral body rejoins the higher self. But sometimes, for reasons that are not selfish, like if you're trying to help your family members, if you're trying to do good to others, like non-selfish reasons, you are permitted to come back to this world and to live up to your when your mission is accomplished. So for people who have near-death experiences, they come back not for themselves. They come back for the future of the others. So they're permitted to come back for reasons that are beneficial for their family members or the greater mankind.
Okay. We don't have any more questions or hands raised. I'll give people another moment here. Sam, really appreciate your being here with us. I hope you felt that this was a good investment of your time. I saw a number of people saying thanks in the chat, so I know you've touched some people with the things you had to say. In the chat is the name of the book, so please write that down. I think it's a worthwhile read. It's not a difficult book to read. So if you feel so inclined, you can read more about what we've been talking about this evening.
Yeah, I'm really glad because people ask very unique questions and very good questions too. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'd like to think that some people say there's an awakening going on. And it's through opportunities like this to talk about consciousness and soul evolution. Maybe if more people understood that there is such a thing, we could bring our collective efforts to raising the quality of our spiritual life in this human existence.
Yes.
Sam, I have one other thing, it's very brief. I also encountered a person that we call, in the vernacular, a shapeshifter. That's not the right term for it, but there's a medical term for it, which they can change their appearance and they change their essence or their being. And you had mentioned that there were beings who could bring in biological youth, the ETs. And I was wondering if you have any information about the percentage of people on Earth who can do that. This person was 66 years old and the body looked like it was 28 years old. It was amazing. And this person was one of those individuals that can change out physical appearance and essence. Do you have any idea if we're populated with those people at a certain percentage, or is this very rare?
There are recorded information of such people in some of the ancient texts in India, and also including the autobiography of a yogi, in which I think Babaji was able to do that. And also in some of the ancient Chinese literature, people who practice Qigong or the energy work were able to do that as well. They were able to live a very long life, almost forever, and they can change or they can shapeshift or change their physical appearances. And once you elevate yourself, once you're able to have the knowledge and to practice certain kind of the energy work, I believe everyone can do that. It's just depending on the effort you make into doing that. There are Chinese ancient texts that tell people how to achieve that kind of ability. And people normally need to meditate and to really make their microcosmic circulation flow and things like that. And it is possible. I don't know how many people around on Earth are like that, but it must be a very small percentage. And they normally don't mix with people in the modern world because they need a very secluded environment in order to continuously practice their work.
Yeah, this person was exactly like that, very attached to nature, very not very socially adept.
Gary poses a quick question. Do you believe that the morphogenic field is a real phenomenon? Are you familiar with what a morphogenic field is?
Could you expand a little bit? I think I've heard that term, but just make sure.
Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the theory is that when enough people believe something, you create a field that causes it to be. So we develop this, in this country, we share beliefs about what's possible and what isn't possible. That doesn't mean that something we believe is impossible is really impossible. We've just created a field that doesn't allow it to be experienced.
So it's very similar to the concept of the collective consciousness, or yeah, we actually we can change our future for the better through our collective efforts. And if enough people create this momentum or inertia, we can definitely do that. But if we don't change, the ETs from the book Thiaoouba Prophecy see that we're going to be heading a catastrophe. So this is actually the reason why they instructed Michel Desmarquet to write this book, to warn us about the real dangers on Earth.
Sam, are you familiar with the medicineless hospital in China? The video that was posted by Greg Braden about curing cancer in 3 minutes?
Yeah, cancer is definitely curable. I haven't watched that video, but I know that cancer is curable.
It's a fascinating video. As Greg shows it in his video, this was taken in a Chinese hospital. A woman had a cancer on her bladder, they brought a sonogram in and they took a picture of that and froze it on the left side of the monitor screen. Then they repetitively went over that area with the sonogram as these practitioners chanted in the background. And in effect, they were putting themselves in an energetic frame of mind that she had already been healed. And over that 3 minutes, you can watch the sonogram showing that tumor slowly diminishing and ultimately distinguishing, just extinguishing.
Yeah, it's certainly possible because one of my clients is a Qigong master from China. She doesn't speak any English, so I'm her interpreter. So she was able to see through the bodies and the organs of her patients. And a few times she was able to extract the tumors from the patient in a lively fashion, like a live. It's just like if you do a search on YouTube for psychic surgeons in the Philippines, you're going to see the videos on those as well. But one thing is that I also, for people who have cancer, I also suggest people to read the book Thyroid Healing by Anthony William, because it explains the reasons for cancer, like by virus and toxins, the combination of the two. Once the patients are healed of cancer, they still need to cleanse their body in order to prevent the recurrence of cancer or the malignant tumors. But the mind is so powerful, it's able to eliminate tumors in front of modern technologies. That's for sure. And I personally witnessed that.
I sat 2 weekends ago, I sat next to Anita Morjani. Have you heard of her?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Anita wrote the book Dying to Be Me. She was at death's door, her body riddled with cancer tumors. And she came to understand that those tumors were created by the stresses that she had allowed to exist in her life. Once she realized who she was and she didn't need to carry these stresses, the cancer didn't have any purpose for being there, and she experienced a spontaneous remission.
Yes, this is why I strongly encourage people to read the book Thiaoouba Prophecy, The Golden Planet, because it explains the reasons for some of the diseases that we all have. Because according to the book, our mind influences, or our mood influences the energy body or the human energy field, the auras, and the auras influence our physical body. So in a sense, our mind is the biggest source of all the diseases we have, in addition to the environmental pollutions or toxins. So we have to be mindful about that. The book explains everything, how the body works and how the colors work. So very interesting book.
Elise has a question. I'm going to take a crack at trying to answer it. What are some of the ways in which we can help in sharing the messages in the book for the betterment of humanity, nature, and other beings? I think it starts by reading the book. If you build your knowledge base by reading the book, then you look for opportunities in your daily life to share that with people. You have to have a sensitivity as to who is open to hearing that. Every time I go traveling, I sit next to people on airplanes, and sometimes a conversation will start up, and I realize the person has a spiritual curiosity, which leads to an interesting conversation. Other people are pretty much, they've got a closed mind and they don't want to hear it. So you first build your knowledge base, but then you be sensitive. You try to look for opportunities to engage people in conversations, but be sensitive to whether they're open to it or not. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Sal. It's been a fascinating evening. You seem to lead an interesting life. I assume you get a chance to talk to people like this from time to time, and so you're doing good work. You're passing along the message of the book and contributing to the awakening that I referenced earlier.
Great. Yes, I'll continue my work. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. Mark will be editing this, putting an intro and an extra on it, and we'll post it on our YouTube channel. A little bit of word on what's coming up. This Saturday, we have an in-person gathering again in Greensboro at the Benjamin Price Library. It starts at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday and goes to noon. Sheila will be making a presentation. It's a great opportunity to meet people face to face and share your experiences. And I encourage you to try it out if you have an opportunity. A week from today, we have another presentation. Richard Smalllow is going to be talking about his family's experience. His mother had kind of a similar experience with another intelligence, another civilization. And she wrote a book called Memories of Tomorrow. So we're going to focus a little bit on that next Tuesday, and I think you're going to find that there are a lot of overlaps with what Sam has presented here this evening and what you'll hear next week from Jonathan. Okay, thank you, everybody, and look forward to seeing you again.